Hey, good morning, everyone. I really hope this is the session that you intended to be at. Because as you know, some of our session titles changed based on yesterday's announcements. So raise your hand if you are in the right session. Brilliant. All right, let's get
How do you know?
So let's get started. What we're going to talk about today is an extension of the announcements of the keynote yesterday for GitLab Duo's partnership. Sorry.
You just said it.
I know, I'm terrible. Collaboration with Amazon Q. So we're going to be talking about how applying generative AI to the full software development lifecycle. My name is Rory Richardson. I've been with AWS, almost 12 years. And in that time, I've seen some remarkable changes, but nothing is changing the game more than the application of generative AI into how we are relating to technology and innovation. Joining me today, I have my partner in crime, Emilio. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everyone, and thanks very much for being here. I'm Emilio Salvador. I'm the VP of Developer Relations Strategy at GitLab. I've been working with Rory for quite a while. In fact, we worked together back in the day at AWS, and it's a great pleasure for me to be here with you and sharing all the amazing work that we've been doing together.
Ollie?
Hi, everyone. I lead the go-to-market for Q Developer, and all I can say is last 18 months have been a blur. Glad to be here today.
All right, let's get started. All right, so this first slide, we're gonna have a little bit of a preamble in order to level set, but I'll try to make it short because I think if you're in the right session, you probably don't need necessarily a whole lot of exposition. When ChatGPT launched in November of 2022, I was one of the people that largely ignored it. I didn't need another friend. I didn't need to write a haiku. I was like, I don't get it. Like, why do I actually care about this? So anytime that I have a new technology, I tend to ask my son, what does he think of it? Because I find when you ask your children, you get a real honest answer. So I go to my son and I say, hey, can you start doing your homework with ChatGPT? And this is around February of 2023. Because I kind of wanted to see, like, what is he going to do with it? Or how is he going to relate to, having a natural language interface? And after I saw his homework, I suddenly understood what we were going to do with it. You see, my son is a lousy writer. He gets it from his mother. And what I got back was 10x more creative and more complex than anything than this kid has ever written. Yes, it was syntactically correct, and the paragraphs actually made sense, but that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was the complexity and how complete his thinking was within the narrative. And I suddenly was like, oh, I get it. If you're able to move from intent and do away with or augment the abstraction layers, then you're going to be able to interface with from what you want to what you want to create in a really dynamically new way. By the way, this is a picture of my son. The other day he came up to me and said, hey, Mom, can I have a briefcase? And I'm immediately thinking bomb. He is my child. And no, he's like, no, I want to build a laptop. Because he's a hardware kid, and he's been, building computers like, I don't know, for the neighborhood for like ever. So there was a lot of spare parts in his room. This is the laptop he built. Please pay attention to the fans. They are particularly useless, but it was his first laptop. So my kid not only will not use the cloud, he also will not learn how to code, but at least he installs Linux, so that's something.
So you can love him.
What'd you say?
So you can love him then.
I can tolerate him.
So there you go.
He's 14, okay? I don't know if you have kids, but they turn a corner. All right, so from the developer's perspective, because we like to start with the customer and work backwards at AWS. Talking to developers, we asked them, what do they love to do most? Most developers love writing documentation. In fact, the older the code, the better the documentation. The unit test, can't get enough. Security, that's reviews and waiting until, the very end of their project to realize they have to rewrite it, the best. Maintaining old code, because who doesn't want to clean up someone else's mess? And these last two are kind of more particular to me because I grew up in East Texas and my brother was a Sheldon. And so anytime I would ask my brother to help me debug or build anything, he was so excited to help his little sister. So anytime a developer gets to talk to non-developers and explain things to them, love it. Obviously, there's a lot of friction throughout the software development lifecycle. How many of you here are developers today? Great. There's a lot of muck, all right? And what we are finding is that the application of generative AI and these tools can help clear away some of the muck. GitLab recently did a study where they found 54% of all developers are using 14 tools or more every day within the SDLC. That's a lot. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of integration. There's a lot of muck. So if we are going to create the future and democratizing and accelerating everyone's access to innovation and technology, we got to start with the muck first. And there's ample opportunity to get some stuff done. Because what we found is that developers aren't exactly spending as much time in the IDE as their managers think. Gartner suggests that they're spending less than 1 hour per day in the IDE, writing fresh code. That's 4 to 5 hours a week. So where AWS started was with code generation. We launched what the artist formerly known as Code Whisper in April of 2023. But we quickly found that if we really wanted to change the conversation from developer productivity, we had to get to development productivity. And since we started with code generation, that was home base because we found the application of generative AI, leveraging Amazon Q, into programming languages, because programming languages were very regular, there's no adjectives, we were getting exponential results. Fantastic. The problem is, if that's where we stopped, we were only affecting the productivity for 4 to 5 hours per week. What the heck about the other 35 hours? So what you have seen in the keynote from the announcements just yesterday was how we are expanding the aperture of Amazon Q Developer into the other aspects of the full software development and lifecycle. In order to do that, we got to meet developers where they are. The 3 agents that Matt Garman announced in the keynote, documentation, or /doc/test and /review, are the autonomous agents in order to assist software developers with the ability to stay in the zone and have agents do the undifferentiated heavy lifting of how they're writing code. So when we talk about meeting developers where they are, you got to be in the IDE, but there's those other tools that are necessary to actually move the needle. So while we started there within having a plugin within the IDE, what you're going to see is that Amazon Q is going to be ubiquitous throughout your experience of working with AWS. In order to expand this conversation, we are collaborating with GitLab to integrate Amazon Q and be better together. This will help customers and developers be able to innovate at scale and will empower teams to be able to deliver better code. One of the things that we found out in 2023 that I thought was particularly interesting was when McKinsey said, you know how you're going to measure code generation? It's going to be about the acceptance rate. How many times a developer says, yeah, that code is really good and I'm going to use it. The problem is, it doesn't really tell the whole story because that's just in that moment, in that thing. Like I said, how do you get to the other 35 hours? So then we started experimenting with other ways that we could measure how effective these tools were. For instance, wouldn't it be great if there were less code reviews? Or when you actually did the code review, the unit tests were actually done, there was actually less security vulnerabilities. So as you see us make these announcements as far as where we are with Amazon Q, we fully understand that we have to integrate it across the other tools. And that is exactly why Emilio and I started working on collaborating between Amazon Q and GitLab. Emilio?
I guess I'm next. Hey, good morning, everyone. We've been working together for a while. And one of the things, as I said before, is, hey, every developer is using like multiple tools. I don't know how many of you are familiar with GitLab. The approach we're taking to this is slightly different. We are providing developers with an end-to-end platform that manages the entire software development lifecycle, from the very beginning, from planning, all the way to getting those applications deployed. There's benefits to that. As you can imagine, is that in my daily life, before joining GitLab, I used like tens of different tools. There was something as my repo, something for unit testing, something for quality, something for control, something for monitoring. So our value proposition relies on the fact that we have, and we happen to be the leader in that market, the most comprehensive DevSecOps platform that you can find in the market. It helps developers across the entire software development lifecycle. There's no time spent switching from one tool to another. When is the last time that you developed an application from the beginning and then everything worked at the first time? Did that ever happen? Did you find a problem when you got your application deployed? Did you find out that there was a performance problem? And then all of a sudden you found yourself in a rabbit hole trying to understand exactly what happened, and then you got lost, and then one of the tools got upgraded, and the interfaces didn't work? We are spending an amazing amount of time just trying to make things work. And then what happens that we go back and we are only spending an hour a day coding. And sometimes that hour is spent even on things that are not really that relevant to us. We are just coding to refactor, to rewrite, to try to understand someone else's code. So what we truly believe is that the power of AI is not just about a plugin in the IDE. It is not just something that happens when your applications get deployed. The true power of AI and the use of agents truly transform the developer experience when they are used across the entire software development lifecycle. And that is what this collaboration is bringing to every single one of us with one idea: save us time to do the thing that we like the most, which is coding, and coding real problems, and spending our time and our intellect, our brain power, being creative and finding solutions to business problems. And as I said before, why is this relevant? Because AI only makes sense when you think about how those tools can help you across every single step of the software development lifecycle. From the moment that you plan something, all the way to you start coding your application, you think about security, you think about tests, and what you need is agents that have full context of what's happening across all those different steps, so they are useful. Can you imagine that you get like 20 assistants to do every single thing along the way? Is that it's going to spend more time for you just to connect the dots between the two than to do that work yourself. And not only that, we are moving away from just having things that are just reactive to being proactive, that can take work on the background for us and create new experiences and save us time, which is at the very end what we are looking forward to. Saving time, accelerated software development, and giving people the time they need to think, which is, in my case, one of the things that I miss the most. We are super busy, we run, sometimes we even forget while we're running. We need time, take a step back, look at the problems that we have in front of us, and find, honestly, creative ways to solve those problems. So this is what we've been working together, for a long time. I went back, right? Yeah. What we announced yesterday.
Yesterday.
It was our preview. This is just the beginning of the journey. This is something available for every single one of you today that you can test. A new set of agents that are going to help you transform the way you develop software today. This will be available for AWS and GitLab customers, either using dedicated or self-managed. And why is this relevant to every single one of you, right? I mean, you may say, why am I going to spend time trying something that is not GA yet? Because this is going to give you a glimpse of what's coming after that. It's going to give you a sense of how agents are going to help you accelerate your software development. How an agent can take an idea, and from that idea, start creating code and give you a jump start on the project that you're working on. It also brings the power of GitLab to what you do today. Things that we take for granted are already embedded in the platform. Security, quality, compliance. Those things are critical to many businesses, but sometimes we just forget about them. You want them to be part of your process, but it's like they just have to work. They just have to be there. And then you need agents to help you ensure that those things are happening. And finally, and more importantly, is that we, as you said, we are meeting developers where they are, right? You get to choose when and where you want to take advantage of these capabilities. Some developers use the IDE a lot. You can use Visual Studio Code. You can use JetBrains. You can use our own interface through the web. You can use a web IDE. The goal here is to find the environment that works the best for every single one of you, and then get the best of the tools that we are introducing to you. And this is a journey. This is just the beginning. This is a preview for agents, and there's more coming. So please stay tuned, and you'll see more of us. And with that, I'm going to give you the time, go and show some of the amazing work that both engineering teams have been working together on, and how you can basically extract the value of the new capabilities.
Thank you, Emilio. As I started in my introduction, last 18 months have been a blur, but it has also been very insightful. After a very long time, we got the opportunity to actually look at the life and day of a developer. So now I will jump into the demo that will showcase this integrated offer that takes all your DevSecOps workflows along with the Amazon Q autonomous AI agents. Now, before I do that, right, it would be amiss of me to sort of talk about a little bit that experience that Rory started or alluded to. That same DevOps survey that you guys did, right? 54% of the individual developers, they're using 14 tools or more. Now imagine this for a minute, like let it sink in. You have a phone for an SMS, another phone in another pocket for calls, maybe one for LinkedIn, and another one to push some code somewhere. That's not practical. Now, I understand. I totally do why these tools matter, because it's developers' choice, and each of these tools offer a certain value. But what happens is it manifests itself in a very nuanced implementation of software development within customer environments. And so now that, as an individual developer, creates muck, but then blow it up into a developer team or development team. Now there is collaboration. There are multiple peoples involved. There is best practices. All of that fuzziness in the software development lifecycle process, which, by the way, in our decks is a very linear process. Some creative decks will make it a circular process. But then there are loops within loops. There is an inner loop, there is an outer loop. Then there is a loop within an inner loop. And so that's what we are trying to reinvent and reimagine. And this is where there are two things that happen, right? In those loops, there is developer working with creative stuff. We are knowledge worker, let's admit it. But then at the same time, in the same day, we are also working as a development assembly line worker. There is toil. And that toil, luckily with generative AI and with AI agents, we can take that away. And that's one aspect of productivity, right? The second aspect of productivity is, as developers, you all know, I know, I am not at my most creative all the time in a day. There is this flow state that we call, right? And in that flow state, magically, ideas flow from my head, your heads, into code, into your keyboard, and that's where you win awards. That's where you get recognition. And so how do we actually unleash that creativity? We unleash that creativity by removing toil and extending your time spent on creative flow state. So please keep that in context. And now let's just jump over to the first demo I'm going to showcase. So Amazon Q Developer Agent for feature development. We launched this earlier this year primarily as an IDE experience. It was designed for you to build multi-file features, fix bugs, or even create unit tests, or all of the above. Now we recognized IDE is one place you can do it, but what if we actually embed that in a DevSecOps workflow, right? Now imagine a world where development teams, they live and breathe on the issue management system. That's where they see what each of us are doing. And so with this demo, let's talk about, let's assume a scenario. Now, I want you to imagine yourself into that situation, right? This is a simple Next.js web application. You're a developer, and you've been tasked to add a sign-up form. Now, just take 5-10 seconds and imagine what you do. And then I'll start the demo. Essentially, I would literally think about it. I would think about the workflow. I would actually go into the web application. I would look at the project. I would look at and understand code. I will create an issue. Now I'll start thinking about the logic of the sign-up form. The logic of the sign-up form obviously would have a username and a password. Then what about, hey, that user already exists? Or what about, hey, this password is not strong enough? And then how do I link it back to the main homepage? And what's the user flow? So I will start thinking about all of these things. Prima facie, this is a very simple thing, but it will take and eat up time. So now I'll start the demo and just see how that whole thing can be short-circuited in the matter of minutes or hours. So within GitLab, you actually go in, you create an issue, and now here is all the things. So whatever 5 or 10 seconds you thought about it, you put that there into the issue, because you've got to tell that agent what do you really need to do. And then within the issue, you invoke Q as a /Q dev. It just jumps in and it starts working. Now, here's another member of the team right now with you, working. And so as it goes down, you see if Generative AI created a code that is attributable to an open source repo, it will give you that attribution. Go through the code. So see how it's adding validations and documentation. Rory told you how much you all love documentation. I love documentation. And so see how all of these validations are coming in. You notice how we have created a file and also a page. And so all that code is integrated into the project. It is taking project context and issue context in one go. Now notice it doesn't stop there, right? Now somebody tells you, hey, we want logging capability added. So how do you add logging capability? You still go in the same issue, you add the requirement, you add the context, and you still again invoke Q Developer Agent. So now imagine an idea. You just took 5 or 10 seconds to think about how you're going to orchestrate it. And then you take that whole 5 or 10 seconds of thinking and leverage Q Developer. And so within the issue, right down to merge release, you know exactly what Q did. You know what you did. Your peers know what happened. All that context traceability is in the issue management system at one place. So that's the promise of what we are doing. Now, some customers or developers have come to me and said, hey, can I create a whole application by myself? Not really. Theoretically, you can. The problem is your prompt really needs to be very complicated. And so there is this whole learning curve and affinity with the tooling that you're using. So there's a learning curve. So point is, you have permission to play, but please allow yourself and your teams to play with the product. It's in public preview, correct? Okay. By the way, this agent, if you want to have a look, it is the world's most advanced. If you go on the SWE bench, on leaderboard, Q's software development agent is on the top in the verified leaderboard as of yesterday. Now let's talk about code review. So show of hands, how many of you in the room think that code review process can be improved or accelerated? Exactly. I'm assuming all those who raised your hand have absolute love for code reviews. Now I get it, right? We all understand the importance of code reviews. It's not going away. Please, for God's sakes, it's not going away. But it can be accelerated. It can be short-circuited. Plus code review again, right? As a developer checking in code or as a senior principal engineer looking at code, there are 2 or 3 competing things that are happening. A, you want to make sure that high quality code goes in from a functional point of view, from a security point of view, from a quality point of view. As the reviewer, you are probably very responsible in terms of emphasizing and implementing organizational best practices and patterns. Now, all of that means that, hey, I checked in the code, now I went for a coffee, now peer reviewer was at a dinner. So now he's going to come back next day and he's going to do that. And so there is this, from a supply chain context, there is non-value added time in there. Now, what we did is we yesterday announced the agent, autonomous agent for code reviews. And so what it does is it looks at your quality issues, your security vulnerabilities, and acts as the first reviewer. Now, there are 2 obvious advantages in there. As an individual developer, what will happen is that you're young, you will make mistakes, and you really don't want to make so many mistakes, and that somebody else is reviewing. So that reviewer takes away all the small nitty-gritties, minor minutiae away from the eyes of anybody else, so you're able to correct that. Think of this from a paradigm of shifting security left, but now add quality to it. So you're taking all of that away. Now, in the context of DevSecOps workflows, now just with that context, understand how this really accelerates things. So you have a merge request, you invoke queue, review agent, automatically it just goes in and starts looking at code. It has the project context, it has the issue context. What it does is, and it will pass by quickly, it identified that, hey, you forgot to add a unit test, severity high. It also understood, read a SQL statement and realized that in statement you are using concatenation, which exposes you to a SQL injection attack. And so you don't want that. Now, I could actually cheat and go to Stack Overflow and see what's going on, but that's me switching windows and doing Google searches here and there. Maybe I'm an expert, but if I was an expert, I wouldn't have made that mistake. I call my friend or I go up and talk, hey, what do I do? But like that would waste 40, 50, 60 minutes of your time. So the reviewer automatically just goes in, and what it did, if in case you noticed, you can actually invoke it to fix it. So it fixes on your behalf. In that context now, imagine this is not an individual single user play. Imagine a multiplayer experience, right? Now the entire team has access to that issue context, knows what has happened. They can see what's going on. The developer went for a coffee and just stayed long, so there's another peer in the team and he doesn't have to wait. He can invoke from the same space and do the fixes. Now flip it around and say, hey, I'm the code reviewer. I don't want to check all the code. I really want to focus on the highly qualitative functional aspects of the code. So I will run it before I actually start reviewing it. And so I filter out all those things. And then I don't have to go to the individual developer. Maybe I can fix it right now and move on. And so now think about removing those small loops. Now I'll go to my favorite place, right? We have all sort of heard about maintenance maturity model. Believe it or not, in my past life, I was in supply chain. Predictive maintenance, preventative maintenance, these concepts are so old in supply chain and logistics world, probably 60 to 70 years. In software development, it also exists. We just don't realize it. Here is the fun part. Developers don't want to work here. I don't want to work on an old feature. I don't want to work on getting an issue where I have to just take a language in V8 on Java, for example, and I want to take it to 17. It's fine, but it's not creative work. It's muck. And so we launched Amazon Q Agent for Transformation earlier this year. Super exciting. We started using it internally at Amazon. We saw a lot of success. We started using it with customers. We saw a lot of success. But here is the fun part. Along with all the successes came a lot of feedback. And those feedbacks came across all the spectrum, right? Like there was, hey, transformation jobs. I have a 2 million line monolith code of Java, an application. And when I run the transform, it takes me 3 hours. While it's running, I don't know what's going on, so I have to wait. So ask number 1, can I run these workloads concurrently? Ask number 2, can it be in my pipeline and not somewhere else? Ask number 3, I don't want to wait for 4 hours. I want to see sequentially, give me a plan first, tell me what you're going to do. And then as this goes, break it down into multiple steps. And then when it ends, give me a detailed report of what changed. I also want to look at the code. I want to review it because human will remain in the loop. And so from that context, we recognize that IDE is one place to do it, but in a multiplayer experience, it sits better in the DevSecOps workflow. So from a maintenance maturity model, start thinking about continuous maintenance, not predictive, not preventative. You're in the world of continuous management. Are we fully there yet? Absolutely not. This is the beginning, but hey, exciting beginning. So let's go on to the demo here. So we have a project, a Java repo. We are in the issues, and we invoke Q transformation agent. So from the issue, immediately Q kicks in inside GitLab as a native offering. It kicks off the pipelines. It starts creating a plan. It gives you each and every step. And then towards the end of it, it creates a pull request or a merge request. And then inside, if you go and look at it, it will detail all the packages. It's not just language A to language B or language A to recent language A. It's also about dependencies and frameworks and all those other things. And so it updates all of that. It gives you a view of what was updated, what did not require to be updated, and what was completely deprecated. And then ultimately, once you sort of accept the plan, you're okay with the plan, you actually just publish it. And so you push it through the pipeline. There's a very deliberate reason why I have one run which failed, because there are times when this will happen to you. It actually alludes to how we set up the problem and goes back to the whole change management aspect of it. Now, these are the 3 use cases. We also announced tests. So as Emilio, you pointed out, Rory, you pointed out, this is just the beginning. But now imagine all of these 3 use cases and now put them into a real world scenario where you're about to add an issue, or you want to create a new feature on an application that is an old version of Java. And so now you start with Q transforms in the same issue. You iterate, you get to a point, you then invoke the software development feature, you give it all the context, it has the project and issue context, you're in the pipeline, you run that, and then ultimately you get to the review process. So your workflows now, all we have done is 7 or 8 different workflows. We have now pulled them into one with all the traceability, logging, and everything. So now, 7 years later, fast forward, somebody is looking at that brownfield code and has no understanding of what really happened. Now you have the end-to-end traceability. So think of it from that perspective. With that, Rory, I will hand it back to you.
That was fantastic. I don't know about you guys, but a lot of the things that we're talking about today are reasons why I'm not still a developer. Muck. Stuff that I didn't think was as creative as architecting like a new way to solve a problem. And honestly, if these tools were available when I learned COBOL, I'm proud of it, then maybe I would still be a developer today, because a lot of the things that we get bogged down on creates friction or grit in the gears. I want to be change gears just a little bit and talk a little bit more philosophical about where the application of generative AI is going. And you gotta hang with me a second, because believe it or not, this will be the nerdiest part of this presentation. When we think about how humans have evolved, especially in the last 100 years, we have fundamentally changed what we value in each other and how information is democratized. Ollie did a great job alluding to that. So far, we haven't seen these technologies really replace people, because the most humanistic, the most creative thing that we do, we haven't been able to replicate. But taking care of the muck, we have seen great advancements. So when you think about, in the beginning, there is data, and it existed. That was fine, except we couldn't share it. So then we created writing systems, right, in order to be able to share information. And after we had writing systems, then we had this great idea, why don't we scoop up everything that we've written and start making libraries so that we would be able to read about the same subject from a lot of different perspectives, and now we have wisdom. I don't know about you, but no one's asked me for a donation for illiteracy in at least 10 years. For the most part, knowledge has been democratized. Additionally, it's cheap. Memorizing things is no longer how we teach children. In fact, I would challenge any of you to tell me your child's cell phone number. But you know your phone number from when you were a kid. Rote memorization is not what we value in each other or in processes anymore. And to be honest, it's not wisdom either. I can become an expert on a lot of different disciplines inside of a week because I have access to Wikipedia, academic articles. I can read something from all over the world in order to gain wisdom. So if we've democratized knowledge and we've democratized wisdom, then what's next? Analysis. Being able to democratize analysis is really, really difficult. In fact, like I said, I've been with Amazon a long time, and the reason why I've stayed at Amazon is that I continue to work on technologies to chip away at one problem. Because that first year at Amazon, I was like, oh man, I don't know why I'm here. What am I gonna do with my life? I had an existential crisis, and I netted it out to one sentence, or one problem statement. How do I enable an 8-year-old kid from Poughkeepsie the ability to perform an analysis for the propensity of breast cancer amongst a population of left-handed individuals? I know it sounds super specific, but hang with me. Every piece of that question, from a technical standpoint, did not exist 12 years ago. The democratization of how we relating to databases has fundamentally changed within the course of that time. Non-relational databases, open source databases, managed databases, all of that had a rise in the last 10 years. Being able to manage identity and privacy across diverse data sets only recently became available to us. But in the last 18 months, I got to the 8-year-old kid part because that kid's not gonna maintain a server, but we have serverless technologies. That kid doesn't have to know any programming languages if he was able to move from intent to the outcome that he's looking for. So the democratization of analysis is what's next. And then after that, who knows? Maybe it's synthesis. Synthesis is, I'm an expert on fluid dynamics, therefore I can perform brain surgery. Taking your deep expertise and knowledge out of one context and being able to apply it to another. We all have that friend that can pick up new disciplines and domains like, I pick up food. That is where we're heading. And honestly, that's what we interview for now. That's what we value in each other. We don't think about knowledge and wisdom. So when we're thinking about the application of these technologies and how people are adopting it, Ali also alluded to this. There's an organizational behavioral change, a humanistic change of, well, this is the way I used to do it, and this is the way I'm gonna do it in the future. So we have found that the folks that are adopting the integration of these assistants to be younger, early career. And we have seen that it greatly accelerates their productivity. I think Matt Garman said as much as 80%. Mm-hmm. And that number keeps changing because we're seeing better and better adoption. And honestly, getting feedback from people about how the tools are being leveraged, in addition to moving aggressively into these agentic models that have autonomy and agency to complete the task on the behalf of the requester. Bring it back to my son for just a second. I've been trying to teach that kid to code since he was 4. I use Code Monkeys. Everybody know what Code Monkeys is? Yeah, get the monkey to the banana, boom, you learn Python over 250 lessons. My kid's 14 now. I can't get those 10 years back. What's the role of Python by the time that kid hits the job market? What is the importance of syntax? We're moving developers from a place of authorship into orchestration. And that is a dramatic change from how I learned code in a very siloed way. I'll use the term multiplayer. Being able to distribute tasks, not necessarily because you have adopted an object-oriented model or you have a class, but Instead, being able to do it real-time collaboratively and use, well, the power of humans for what humans are really good for. And that's the future. So thank you for indulging me for my super nerdy side, but I find it just the most interesting milestone that I've experienced in my life of how we are relating to technology, democratizing innovation on a scale that I didn't even think was possible in my lifetime. So with that, I would encourage you to evaluate GitLab Duo that's with Amazon Q. It's available in preview today in the GitLab branch. Emilio, welcome to the Q family.
Thank you. It's been an honor.
I'm looking for my GitLab pin back, just saying.
You get one.
And next steps, you can use this QR code, but you can visit the GitLab site to get started today. It's very easy to get started with Amazon Q and evaluate GitLab. So I'd encourage you to start playing because, well, in the past, I didn't pay people to play, I only paid for results. That's not what I do now.
Yeah.
Within my team, I ask them to experiment, to play, and to come up with new ideas on how we can be better together. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.